Some stars shine so brightly that their fall feels unreal.
In this episode, we step into the quiet Brentwood bedroom, where Hollywood's most iconic face met a death wrapped in questions, whispers, and lingering shadows.
The Marilyn Monroe case opens. This is Memento Mori.
Won't you spare me over another?
So today we're doing a deep dive into a tragedy that really sits right at the intersection of celebrity, power, and secrecy in American history.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, I mean, she was the absolute symbol of post-war glamour, this platinum blonde icon. But there was this staggering duality to her.
Absolutely. The sparkle, that was all for the cameras.
Yep.
But behind the scenes, there was this chronic anxiety, this deep well of sadness that was entirely private.
And that's what we're here to talk about.
Great.
Her death on August 4th, 1962, she was only 36. It was officially ruled a probable suicide, acute barbiturate poisoning.
Right. But that conclusion, I mean, it almost immediately sparked this firestorm of political intrigue and, decades of mystery that's still unresolved.
Exactly. So our mission here is to move past the simple tabloid version of the story. We're going to explore the inconsistencies, the pretty serious investigative flaws that turn this from a police file into one of the darkest legends of the American dream.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, because to understand that final weekend, you really have to understand the immense, decades-long pressure she was under.
That foundation of turmoil is so crucial. She was born Norma Jeane Mortensen back in 1926. And the sources all really emphasize how unstable her childhood was.
A lot of foster families, an orphanage.
A painful rotation. And that early trauma. Yeah. It wasn't just a tough start. It really planted the seeds for these deep psychological issues, especially around abandonment and insecurity.
She carried that with her right to the very top. Even at the height of her fame, when you could argue she was the most famous woman on the planet, she was battling severe depression, chronic anxiety, and just this debilitating insomnia.
And that's the key. That's the factor that really allowed this tragedy to happen. Her reliance on medication. She developed this extreme dependency on sleeping pills. And it was made so much worse by the aggressive psychiatric treatments that were pretty common back then.
So leading right up to August of '62, the external pressures were just huge.
That was immense.
Professionally, she'd just been fired from the film. Something's got to give. It was a very public blow, a real humiliation.
And then you add the personal chaos on top of that. Her relationships were so complicated, including these widespread rumors of secret affairs.
With both President John F. Kennedy, JFK.
And his brother, the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, RFK.
Right. And these relationships, they were reportedly reaching a breaking point. They put her directly in the crosshairs of the country's most powerful family.
And all the dangers that come with that. So the stage is set. She's in her home in Brentwood under the care of her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, and her housekeeper, Eunice Murray. And this is where the official timeline, this is where it starts to unravel.
Okay, let's walk through that night. Saturday, August 4th. What's the timeline that the police were given?
So the evening reportedly started pretty quietly. Around 7:10 p.m., she had a brief phone call with Joe DiMaggio Jr.
Then a little later, around 7:40 p.m., a call comes in from the actor Peter Lawford.
And he's married into the Kennedy family. Kind of a liaison.
Okay, and his statement about that call is terrifying.
It is. He claims her voice was very low, slurred almost unintelligible. And then she supposedly ended the call with this mumbled, chilling final word. Goodbye.
Oh.
So Lawford, he's immediately concerned. He thinks he just spoke to someone in the middle of a suicide attempt. He calls his lawyer, who tries to reach Marilyn's house after midnight, but no answer.
And the crucial part here is the time. 8 hours passed between that frantic call from Lawford and when her body was actually found.
That gap, that darkness is critical. So now we get to the discovery, which is where the timeline gets, deeply suspicious.
The housekeeper, Eunice Murray.
Yes. According to her, it's around 3:30 in the morning. She sees a light under Marilyn's locked bedroom door. She can't get a response, so she calls Dr. Greenson.
And he comes over.
He arrives, looks through a window, sees her lying face down on the bed, holding the phone receiver, and then he breaks down the door. He pronounces her dead right there.
Okay, but here it is.
The time gap.
The police were not called until 4:25 a.m.
Almost an hour later, a critical 55 minutes between a doctor finding the body and the official police notification.
In any suspicious death investigation, that's an eternity.
Precisely. And that delay immediately fueled all this suspicion that the scene, may have been arranged or tidied or altered before investigators ever arrived. It just compromises the entire investigation from the start.
But despite that messy timeline, the official conclusion came very quickly.
Right. The autopsy was done by Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the famous pathologist. He determines the cause of death is acute barbiturate poisoning.
And with empty pill bottles found nearby, the police they settle on probable suicide.
And this is where that initial police report starts to completely fall apart. We have to ask some fundamental questions about the science here.
Okay, let's get into that. Because the official cause of death swallowing pills, it just doesn't seem to hold up.
It really doesn't. If she had swallowed a lethal dose of nebutyl and chloral hydrate, which is what the empty bottles implied, what would Dr. Noguchi have been absolutely guaranteed to find in her stomach?
Residue.
Residue, and tons of it. A massive oral dose of barbiturates. It has to go through your digestive tract. It leaves behind evidence. But Dr. Noguchi's autopsy found nothing.
No residue at all.
Not a trace.
That's the forensic smoking gun right there. If you swallow a lethal dose of pills, you find residue. If there's no residue,
then they weren't swallowed. Exactly. This complete lack of evidence suggests the drugs bypassed her digestive system entirely.
Which only leaves a few other ways for the drug to get into her system.
Two, really. Injection or suppositories. Both deliver the drug right into the bloodstream. So the idea of suicide by swallowing pills, it becomes scientifically, untenable.
And then there's the state of the room itself. The bedroom was described as excessively tidy, sterile even.
Which is strange. A massive oral overdose usually triggers a violent physical crisis.
Yeah.
Vomiting, spasms, disarray.
The scene should have been messy.
It should have been. The fact that she was found lying neatly, face down, holding a phone in a tidy room, it just adds to this idea that someone cleaned up, that someone staged it to look like a peaceful passing.
And we can't ignore the human element here. The housekeeper, Eunice Murray, her testimony was central to that official timeline.
And she repeatedly changed her story to the police in the weeks and months after.
That's a huge red flag.
It is. I mean, it all culminated decades later in this highly speculative 1985 interview that she then sort of retracted, where she allegedly claimed, quote, the Kennedys were there, everything was messed up.
And even with the retraction, that just solidified the public's distrust. It suggested politics were involved at the scene.
What's equally suspicious to me is the missing paperwork. The official investigation never released any records of Marilyn's final phone calls.
The call with Lawford? Or potentially with the Kennedy brothers?
They're just gone. The official silence around those records is deafening. I mean, if you genuinely believe it's a simple suicide, why hide her final conversations? It suggests there was something sensitive, something political that had to be buried from the start.
Okay, so with all these omissions, especially the forensic certainty that the drugs weren't swallowed, we have to look at the alternative theories. And they mostly point towards homicide.
Or at least a cover-up. And the most famous theory, the one that fits the timing and the missing records, is the Robert F. Kennedy connection.
The allegation being that she was involved with both JFK and RFK, and as those affairs ended, her emotional demands, maybe even threats to go public, they became a huge threat to their careers.
An existential threat. The motive here wasn't just personal, it was about political preservation. The fear was she had a diary, that she'd expose family secrets about, sensitive stuff like Fidel Castro assassination plots or the family's war on organized crime.
So the theory goes that RFK was in Los Angeles that night.
Some accounts say he was. And if he was, the theory is that he or his security associates silenced her, probably with a lethal injection, which explains the missing residue. And then they coordinated the staging of the scene during that crucial 55-minute delay.
Then there's theory 2, which points to external forces, the Jimmy Hoffa Mafia link.
Right, you have to remember the political climate. RFK, as Attorney General, was in this relentless war against Teamsters President Jimmy Hoffa and the Mafia.
And they hated the Kennedys for it.
They wanted revenge, or at least leverage. So Marilyn, with her access to Kennedy's secrets, she becomes a pawn. The Mafia sees her drug dependency and views her as an opportunity. Stage a suicide, silence her, and discredit the Kennedys all in one go.
Okay, and then the third major theory, which is less political and focuses on her immediate circle.
The role of Dr. Ralph Greenson, her psychiatrist. This one is compelling because it still perfectly aligns with that key forensic fact. No oral residue.
This theory puts the blame on him. He was reportedly a very dominant, very controlling figure in her life.
So the idea here is medical error, He's trying to calm her down during a crisis, maybe stop her from hurting herself, and he accidentally gives her a fatal overdose via injection.
It would have been easy to miscalculate given her tolerance levels.
Tragically easy. So he panics. He covers up the malpractice by staging an oral suicide to save his career. And that would explain why he was first on the scene, why the door was broken down, and why the room was so tidy before the police arrived.
So after decades of all these theories swirling, the LA authorities finally caved to the pressure and reopened the case.
They did, in 1982, a full review. The LA District Attorney's Office looked into everything. The Kennedy rumors, Murray's conflicting statements, the autopsy, especially the lack of residue.
And what did they find?
Well, their conclusion was, it was damning, even if it didn't change the official story. The DA admitted that the original 1962 investigation suffered from serious shortcomings and mismanagement. They acknowledged the flaws.
But they still didn't rule it a homicide.
No. They ultimately concluded there was insufficient evidence pointing to murder. The ruling stayed suicide or accidental overdose. It's a subtle point, but they're basically saying the first investigation was a disaster, but now, 20 years later, we can't prove it was murder beyond a reasonable doubt.
So her death just endures. It's one of the 20th century's most tragic cold cases. It's this open wound where the official story and the forensic science just seem to be in constant conflict.
And that's the takeaway. Her death is this powerful symbol of how fame, politics, and power can completely obscure the truth. The official records survive, not because the evidence backs them up, but because the original investigation was so bungled that proving foul play became impossible.
Marilyn Monroe's life was lived in this intense public spotlight, but her death is still shrouded in these private political shadows. And you have to ask yourself, how much trust can you really put in official records when the authorities themselves admitted the investigation had serious shortcomings?
It raises a pretty provocative question, I think. When you have power intersecting with a tragedy like this, how many confirmed flaws, a missing hour, zero forensic residue, changing testimonies, political interest, how many of those does it take before a case moves from a credible accident to a calculated cover-up? The truth, I think, is probably buried not under complexity, but under convenience.